Well, welcome to day 4 of Debruary 2022, the fifth annual Video a Day Debruary event. Tonight, we're going to be talking about shame, which is not a topic that gets much coverage. But the reality is that the negative messages that you received as a young person can have a very deep and lasting impact on who you are as an adult and how you show up in life and in your relationships. So, our guest tonight, Wendi, is here to help you with feelings of shame that many of you may be suffering. It's a huge issue because it creates the feeling that you're not good enough, that there's something wrong with you. But somehow, like I said, it's not something that we really identify or really talk about. I think it's especially important to talk about it because um, a lot of the women who come to this channel are survivors of some kind of, childhood abuse, some kind of trauma, parental caregiver neglect or abandonment. And so you grew up feeling unloved, not really supported, not really knowing your place in the world. It's a feeling that a lot of people have, but they don't really know what it is and they can't really identify it. And but it's the reason behind why you feel so unworthy and bad and not good enough about yourself and why you have such a defeatist attitude. You may remember our guest. She was here in February before, a year or two ago. Wendi Dumbroff, LPC, a licensed professional counselor, and she's in private practice where she specializes in individual, family, couples, and sex therapy. So join me in welcoming Wendi back to February. Hey.
Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for having me back. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, great. We got a lot of I got a lot of questions for you on this issue because, when you proposed this, I thought, wow, that is really a good topic, but it's not, I can't say that I've ever heard anybody talk about it, ever.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Come sit
And
in
I
my
went all over the internet, but
yeah, come sit in my office one day.
so why don't we begin by, to give us a definition of what shame is and how we can identify it from maybe some other emotions like, I don't know, embarrassment or guilt or other things like that.
Yeah. You gave a very good synopsis of shame just now. You said shame is when a person looks at themselves and says, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me, fundamentally with me. I'm not good enough in some way. Um, and let's just put that next to guilt. Guilt is when you feel badly about something you've done, some behavior, something you can generally say I'm sorry for. um,
Mm.
Guilt and shame can go together, of course, um, but shame is not something I've done. Oh, I'm so sorry I never called you back, I feel really badly about that, I should have called you, I'm really sorry. Right? We can say, please forgive me, I'm sorry. Shame is, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me. I never can remember anything. I gotta, oh, I just one more thing I can't remember to do. And, there's
Oh
something wrong
boy.
with me. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some typical signs that someone is dealing with feelings of shame? What kind of behaviors do they exhibit? What kind of things do they say?
Yeah. You know, I think we all know. The wonderful thing about being human and emotions is we all know what things feel like. Everybody has experienced some shame to some degree. But when shame becomes a bigger issue, if you ever see those like posters of different emotions, right? And the shame one is always the person's looking down, they're hiding, they're avoiding, they don't want to be seen, maybe they're, just withdrawn. However, sometimes we gather our defenses up to cover our shame, and what might come out is anger. What Because that's the tough emotion that sort of puts the shield around the shame. Usually under anger, there's something more vulnerable,
Hmm.
and very often you find something of just not good enough in some way. It may just show up as sadness. It really depends. It really may be just this nagging feeling somebody has, that's there. But generally, it can permeate their life in across different contexts.
Wow, that sounds really sad. So, are there like different types of shame, or is there just one type?
Well, if you look up in the psychology literature, I believe they can classify shame differently. I'd be very honest, off the top of my head, I don't know what those classifications are. But the central theme is that it comes down to I am less than, or there's something wrong with me, not good enough. For example, shame may come from, uh, as you were talking about, being given a message as a child. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you? What's the matter with you? Or just having, perhaps a child had a depressed primary caretaker who was unavailable to them. So the child creates this story of, oh, there must be something wrong with me. Why isn't my mother or my father or my grandparent, whoever their primary caretaker is, here for me? Right? Because when the adult in a child's life, when there's something wrong there, whether they're abusive in some way or they're just removed in some way, children, if the child looks at the adult and there's something wrong with the adult, then that's almost like an existential crisis for the child. It's like, oh no, if there's something
Yeah.
wrong with you, what does that mean for me? So the child, this is all unconscious, of course, but the child internalizes whatever the experience is and says, oh, actually, there must be something wrong with me. It can't be them. So that one type of shame, that direct message or indirect message that we get from our caretakers, but you end up with that feeling of something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Here, another example. So maybe these are be ways it would be classified, but shame can be intergenerational, right?
Mm.
I once met a woman who was a descendant of John Wilkes Booth, for example, right? And so just having that legacy in the family can create feelings, right? Or perhaps you live in a neighborhood where you're on you know, the side of town where the houses are not as nice and there's this small section and it's the blue collar workers, and the rest of the town is it's like this division. Or you go to a school with these people of very high incomes and well-to-do families, right? There may be some shame around being around the family and feeling less than because you're the poor person relative to the community that you are within. So shame can come from different avenues, but underlying, there's really that experience of not good enough in some way, not
Okay.
deserving, not good enough. Yeah.
I think I've seen that. I did see, I'm learning too.
Mm.
I didn't identify that as shame, but when I had friends whose, dads abandoned the family,
Uh-huh.
abandoned them.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
grew up without a dad, and then, mine was there, very present. Um, now that you were saying that, I say, okay, that's what that was. They
Ah,
felt ashamed. They had, this feeling like, why am I not good enough? Why is my dad not here?
yeah.
What happened? Why am I so bad that he had to leave?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So the child says, boy, there must be something wrong with me. My father left me. Or um, or being the child whose father abandoned, and then not only is there something wrong with me because he left me, but my friends have fathers that are here that take care of them, but I don't. So the shame is compounded by feeling othered in some way.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Not anything I could have done about it, but
Oh
just,
no.
putting it all into perspective now, 30
Sure.
years later.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Uh,
let's talk about what you see in your practice as the sources of shame. And we
yeah.
know you just mentioned, child neglect and perhaps child abuse as well comes in there. But
Yeah.
are there other sources that you frequently see in your practice?
Well, there's so many ways people can feel shame or not good enough. Sometimes it actually is because of sometimes, as we talked about, it's the message they get about who they are or their stance within society. Um, as you mentioned in the beginning, one of the things I do is sex therapy. Sexual abuse can absolutely create shame. Um, I think there is something intuitive in children that they know this isn't right. But sometimes, and I always say this to people, your body, you can't help how your body reacts. Right? Bodies have nerve endings on them, and so it is not uncommon that a child who is sexually abused may also feel pleasure around that abuse, and just feeling that pleasure, knowing this was wrong, that can create an experience of shame. And again, the child takes that on as theirs. And so often, of course, there are threats to the child. Don't you tell
Right.
anyone. Or the child is gaslighted. You made me do this. They're manipulated and gaslighted, and this is your fault. And of course, they're just a child. They don't have a developed adult brain that they can look at the person and say, "Are you crazy? Do you know what you just did to me?" Um, it's the power differential. There's so much there. So I do deal with people with a lot of sexual shame. Sometimes somebody really has done something that you can understand why they have shame around it. They have done things. Oftentimes it's a secondary creation of shame because the reason they've done certain things they've done, perhaps acted out sexually in their life in a certain way, um, based upon things that were done to them when they were younger, right? So you know, they already had this uh, convoluted coping mechanism uh, developed, and but they have done things as an adult, even if they can understand that it wasn't their fault that they were set on that path. Uh, and then there comes the part of unpacking it and looking for self compassion and self forgiveness and coming into that
Yeah, I'm
space.
going to ask you about that in a minute. What we can do to help kind of start
Yeah.
ourselves on the path. But I wanted to bring another issue that comes up a lot. Women get shamed a lot online, and it's not like you really have any relationship with these individuals. You never saw them or heard. I mean, just some face on the internet.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of shaming that goes on women around being single,
Hmm.
about being older,
Hmm.
um, sometimes about the way that they look. Um, it's very interesting, and to
Yeah.
me, that is abusive. Even though it's coming from a complete stranger, it's abusive behavior,
Yeah.
and it's designed to, I feel, induce some kind of shame in the women. Do
Hmm.
you hear about? Do you see much of that?
Well, uh, do I see that within my practice? I mean, you hear about that uh, all the time. What I see, I do see the effect of social media in my practice. People see things online, they feel left out, they feel hurt, because they feel like, one person once said to me, everybody's life is a Pepsi commercial except for mine, because she believed
I'm
that.
sorry, I know she was hurt,
Yeah,
but
she
that the
was
way the
hurting.
phrasing is funny.
Yeah, she said everybody's life is a Pepsi commercial except mine. And what a painful experience that is, to really believe that everybody else is living this life. I have not had specifically that kind of abusive bullying, personally in my practice. I've not. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but of course that's a big issue that I hear about, read about all the time. And what I say about the people that do that, because it's very easy to be real tough behind the anonymous, whatever screen name you use, and on a computer sitting in your uh, basement somewhere in your house, right? And say these things. But I really think it's more of a reflection of the person who's doing that. And my sense is that person probably feels not good enough about themselves, because why does somebody put someone else down, whether it's online or someone at school, um, or even at my age, I've seen things like this occur. It's the person who's doing that who doesn't feel good about themselves in some way, and probably their own shame that they can't hold. So they are dispelling that and putting it into someone else and trying to
Mhm.
make themselves feel better. Because when that person types those things into their computer, they may get this little like, yeah, he, she, they're such a jerk, right? I told them, okay. And what do? They feel elevated in some way because they put someone down. Um, and I think that a person who already may live with a lot of shame within them, that though, of course, that's going to be hurtful to anybody, right? Nobody likes to see things like that hurled at them. But if you're already feeling so fragile within, like there's something wrong with me, and somebody throws this at you, then it can really pack a punch.
Well, I have something. This is deeply disturbing, but since this is your line of work, I felt this was a good topic to present to you.
Sure.
A study was done that was, I think it was concluded in maybe 2012 or something, but it was on this site called Black Woman's Blueprint, and it was an anonymous survey, and women responded about, what kind of contact they had that was inappropriate, sexual contact, or actual assaults, this kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it showed that more than 60% of the Black women who responded reported some kind of coercive sexual contact, sexual misconduct, assault, or abuse as minors under the age of 18.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so it's like, then, there's all these other reports. You kind of put all the stuff together. And basically it says that Black women are uh, statistically experience much higher rates of psychological abuse, including humiliation, insults, name calling, coercive control, than do women overall of all other ethnicities and races here in the United States.
Wow.
So, with that in mind,
Yeah.
how do you approach uncovering that kind of sexual shame when it seems like it permeates
Mm,
this culture? I just,
yeah.
I can't even put this politely because
Yeah.
that's just, the numbers are ridiculous.
That's an epidemic. That is just so painful.
And that's just in one website. Just think about the people who didn't even know
Who
about that
didn't
and
respond?
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a number of people? Do you know the number of people that responded to that survey?
I do not have
Oh,
that
that's okay.
note.
Doesn't matter if it's 10 and 6 out of 10,
No,
or if
it
it's,
was at least several hundred, but
yeah.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh. So
So with that,
uncovering,
how do
yeah,
you in your profession, unpack something like that when it comes across? Because
yeah,
this is the kind of thing like what you were just talking about, generational. Obviously, that is the case
yeah,
because I mean, this can't just pop up out of the blue.
no, yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. So it's a good question, right? How do you figure out that a person is sitting with this? One of the things I do is specifically when people come to me for some sort of sexual issue, I do a very thorough sexual and relational history. And one of the questions that I ask, as gently as possible, and of course, these histories are always with the caveat, if there's anything, I may ask a lot of questions, but if there's anything you're not comfortable asking me, telling me, then you can choose not to answer. But that in and of itself tells you something, like, and then it's like, you don't have to tell me, but what would it mean to tell me whatever it is you're holding on to?
Right.
And sometimes that alone can bring up the experience. And one of the questions that I do ask people is, have your sexual boundaries, have your boundaries ever been crossed in any way, sexually or otherwise, right? Boundaries are so important in every context of life, whether it's, the bathroom door is closed, most of us know that, we don't walk in, right?
Right.
That's a very clear boundary. Not always. I've had situations where an adolescent in a home didn't necessarily have that privacy. So So that's a very clear boundary, but people's boundaries are crossed all the time. Sometimes it's not physically. It may be words, it may be the way a person or parent or caregiver or adult looks at you in a way,
Hmm.
or the things they say to you, or the way they behave in front of you, the comments they make to a child. There's a lot of ways that children can be sexualized and sexually abused that don't involve touch, but they are no less abuse uh, than being touched, because the child is impacted by that, and can be severely impacted by that.
I
Yeah.
agree because I see so much. That's why I, kind of was looking at, how do if as people deal with this, how do they tend to show up when
Yeah.
they're dealing with this kind of trauma as a child? In
Uh-huh.
what ways does it present itself as they start going through life? The reason I'm asking you that is because, I don't want them to feel like they have to jump on here and spill their guts and, this is not a therapy session. But
Of
what I'm
course.
looking for is for you to present a couple of things and maybe get them thinking, wow, maybe that's what's happening with me,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I should try to get some help. That because, like I said, we don't really talk about shame and
Hmm.
the impact that it has. And with you here, I thought it would just be a good idea to give them some things. Well, if you do this,
Sure.
it might mean that you're dealing with some shame and you just need to unpack it and, with the help of a therapist.
Oh yeah. Well, there's so many different ways. Uh, Someone who is sexually abused early in life as a child, someone who survives childhood sexual abuse. There's very many ways that that can show up. Some people, if they have the support and the help as children, and they are provided with a resilient, caring environment, they not everyone is doomed to be severely impacted, but unfortunately, so often kids don't have that,
Right.
or they don't even tell someone what happened. But there's so many ways. Um, a partner becomes very frightened if their significant other comes up behind them just to, a gentle touch, but they freeze. They become very anxious and shut down around sex. They literally sometimes dissociate. They're not even present. Like they're something happens to them. I've heard people say, it's like we start to engage, and then all of a sudden I'm not. It's like I'm not there. And so there's so many different ways it would be. It could be just sexual avoidance. A lot of times a couple may come and one partner wants sex, the other doesn't. It's actually the most common reason that people come to sex, some sort of discrepant desire, come to sex therapy, some sort of discrepant desire in a couple. But the reasons for the person kind of, sometimes it's just a libido drive, whatever you want to call it. One person just naturally has a higher drive and they want sex a little more than the other. And then we could talk about willingness and, um, can you, even if you don't have desire in the moment, can you be willing to engage? However, some people, there's a lot packed into that, and they
Right.
say it's like, no, I get a lot of anxiety every time I think about having sex. They may actually have no memory of anything that happened to them. Sometimes things come back. Sometimes they've begun to have memories of something, and that's why they may come to therapy. But they don't connect that to anything that's current in their sexual life. Um, so
What about women who, and because this comes across my desk a lot, women that are in relationships where they're not really getting back much of anything. It's like, why are you, why are you even there? This guy treats you like you're a rug to
mm,
walk on.
yeah,
But they just go overboard giving and taking care of the guy and like mothering him and, catching him and cushioning him. And it's just the weirdest thing.
yeah,
It's just like it's like an anxiety to do everything and feel like they're worthy of having this sorry man as
Yeah.
for a partner.
Yeah. So they caretake this person and get very little in return. And
Exactly.
yeah, as someone like that, I would probably do well, I always do. I'm trained through the Ackerman Institute, which is a family and couple institute. And so when I work with anyone, I always do a genogram of their family, and I look at what were the relationships like. And if somebody came into my office, and I would be thinking, wow, what does that mean to this person? Is that how this person experiences love? And very likely, is that how that person experienced love as a child? Right? The only time they got any accolade or any acknowledgement is when they were doing something. Oh, when I swept the floor, my mom would smile at me. And that was the only positive thing I ever
Um,
got from them. And so what do? Everybody needs that. Everybody wants to feel like I matter, I'm good. So they learn, okay, all right, if I just do and do and do, um, and they find someone. We leave our family. One of my graduate school professors once said, I'll never forget this. She said, we leave our family of origin doing a certain dance, and we find someone else doing a similar dance that we can sort of move into that space. Um, and until we all get enough therapy and figure that out, but so just but specifically in that, I would imagine that that person had a history of pleasing, and that perhaps pleasing means love, and and got very little, you know, crumbs, but that's all they ever got.
oh, so that's what they're used to. Well, viewers, if you have some questions for Wendy, you want to know something about shame, you think that may be what's going on in your life, or a close, family member or friend, you have a question about it, now's the time. Just type your question into the chat, and I'll display it across the screen for her to see. Um, so, what's the first step if somebody feels like this could be, we're talking about all this and just saying, okay, that could be what's going on with me. What
Yeah.
do you recommend the first step be that they should take?
Well, I think that it's always useful to find either a trusting friend or a therapist, who can really help you unpack and explore your family of origin, your life, your experiences, the things that have happened to you, and very importantly, the meaning that you have made of it. Right? So for example, that child whose parent was neglectful, and the meaning they make of that is that there's something wrong with me. Oh, can't be something wrong with you. There must be something wrong with me. So there one child in a family. There are other children. The other children seem to always get preferential treatment to this particular child. Oh, I'm the one that's not good enough. Maybe I'm not pretty enough. Maybe I'm too loud, or my hair is different than all my siblings' hair. For whatever reason, they are just outcasts. So there are the things that happen, and then there's the meaning that we make of the things that happen. And
Gotcha.
so I think we have to find out each person's individual story. What is the story they are telling themselves? What's the narrative that they have? And begin to question that narrative, and begin to look at that and say, this story has been written by someone else, by other people around you. That abuser has really that abuse that you suffered as a child, sexual or otherwise, that abuse has really, that person is still abusing you today, because you are still acting as though, you know you are behaving in life with the message that that person gave you, and they're holding all this power over you still, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
so
terrible.
beginning to question that, beginning to write your own narrative about who you are, beginning to see your strengths. I am so strength based in my work. I've had people just come in and just tell me, everything bad about them, and meanwhile they're like the CEO of a company or something, right? Or they write this beautiful poetry, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like, really? You don't see your gifts. You don't see that caring thing you did for your child this morning, and just that you knew that he was sad and you turned to him and said, "It's okay, sweetheart." And what you gave him, and that you were never given that, but you gave that to your child. Like, do you see the strength and resilience in that? I think it's really, really important to help people see their strengths and to let them know that they are not defined by something that happened to them a long time ago, and help them to write a different narrative about who they are in this
Okay.
world. And also, one thing I always say to people is that the things you do make sense. Even if somebody's done something heinous, even if they've told some lies and they've done some terrible things, usually, just like the woman that you're talking about who is giving and giving and giving and getting crumbs, right? Usually we can make sense of it. It doesn't mean it's useful in your adult life because maybe you're not happy now. But we all develop those coping mechanisms as kids, and we take them into our adult life. But maybe it's not useful anymore. We can
Yeah, let that go.
yeah, we can
We have a
understand.
question here, Wendy.
Yes.
It's from Ash. It says, can
Ah,
jealousy be tied to shame? I had an abusive mother who told me she never wanted me and finally discarded me. I
oh,
get jealous of people who have loving mothers.
wow. And Ash, thank you for that question. And I just want to honor the painfulness of that. An abusive mother who told you she never wanted you and discarded you. And oh, how painful. And I just want to just sit with that for a minute, because that is really what a painful thing to have experienced. And what I can tell you is, you know, take a look. And I'll get to the jealousy, but I just want to address this first, because it's not so, it's something that I've heard before, where parents mistreat children. Again, the child makes that assumption. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. Why doesn't my mother treat me well? Why doesn't she want me? But it's not about you, because children are innocent. Children are helpless little beings. They are. There is a basic goodness, I think, in all people underneath, maybe with the exception of people who really are
Yes.
psychopaths or
Yeah,
something, right?
psychopaths and
Yeah.
sociopaths.
But there is a basic goodness, and just like that person sitting behind their computer screen who's making someone else feel bad because they don't feel good about themselves, very likely or very possibly your mother is someone who doesn't feel good about herself inside, because why would you ever treat a child in that way? Um, that's not about you. I guess all this to say is that this wasn't about you. It was about her. And to see, jealousy is a very interesting emotion. Um, yeah, if you sit with jealousy, right, and you just open to that feeling, very often, I think underneath, um, there's there's a lot of pain. There's a grief, perhaps. Why couldn't why don't I have a mother? Why is we only get one mother, right? And so why is the mother that I had not like this mother? And so sometimes there's a lot of grief underneath that, and it's okay to mourn the mother that you wish you had. That's okay, and to grieve that loss, and to be able to use your close friends. Um, I get it that nobody is a mother, but to use your close friends and other close relationships and find people who value you, right? Find people who will love you for you and who you are. And it's okay. We talked a little earlier about boundaries. If you are finding someone who is mistreating you, It's okay to keep a person at arm's length and say, you know what? I don't have to hate you. I don't have to, you know, never talk to you again. But I'm going to keep you here because you're not treating me in a way I want to be treated, right?
Oh, I tell them that all the time, all in
Yeah.
that exact word, those exact words.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think it's important to sit with the jealousy and just open it up because eventually, whatever we're feeling, and I guess this also comes up, it is useful and necessary, I think. I would even say necessary to turn towards it because what we don't turn towards, it doesn't go away. It's like the air in a balloon animal. If you squeeze it in one place, it doesn't go away. It just comes out somewhere else in that animal. And when we push things down, they come out somewhere, right? So maybe that jealousy leaves you feeling angry. Maybe you get angry. Oh, I can't believe it. They have such a great mom. Like, and I don't know. I'm not talking to you, so maybe that's not your case at all. So I'm just hypothesizing possible scenarios here, right? But opening to the sadness and the grief that's likely underneath that jealousy. Um, with a caring therapist, that would be helpful to do that, to find someone who can help you navigate that. I do recommend that. Um, and because, to go through that experience in life, my goodness, that's so hard. That's so painful. Who wouldn't want to discuss that with someone and understand it a little better? Right. And so, very often, underneath those feelings that may be a little more angry, that may be a little more complex, there's often a very deep pain. And when I say turn towards it, it doesn't mean you have to jump into the deep end when you don't know how to swim. That comes at your pace, in your timing, a little bit at a time. Maybe you're just going to put a the water and see how it feels. Maybe you're just going to stand about 50 feet back and look at the pool and say, maybe I'll walk up closer tomorrow. But at least beginning to set an intention to say, okay, let me sit with this experience. There's a wonderful book I can recommend by one of my teachers in the field of mindfulness and meditation. Her name is Tara Brach, Brach. And her book, oh, I have it right here, Radical Compassion. This is her book, Radical Compassion by Tara Brach. So, okay. um, really gives you a way to sit with emotions and to open to them, kind of a how to. And the very first step is to recognize what you're feeling. So maybe that would be jealousy in this case. Sit and be with the jealousy and let it be there. Let it be there just as it is. That's the truth of this moment, right? Jealousy is here. What does this jealousy feel like in my thoughts? Ah, oh, I wish I had a mother like that. How come I didn't get that? What is it like in my emotions? I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm mad. Oh, what is it like in my body? Oh, it feels so tight. Feels I'm all like balled up, right? Um, what is it like? What is the truth of this moment? And just allowing yourself to be with it just as it is, without judgment, with compassion for the fact that that feels pretty difficult, and it is pretty difficult, right? And this book, I think, can be helpful because it gives you a way to approach that again at your pace. And if there's at any point where you find yourself being like, whoa, this is too much, I can't be with this anymore, that's okay. Just take a step back. Take a breath and cleanse it, and set an intention to revisit at another time when you're feeling a little bit stronger.
So Wendy, let's thanks Ash. And Ash, we love you. You got a second family here. So anytime you want to talk, I have exchanges all the time with other ladies by email. So feel free, you can hit me up too.
That's very nice.
Oh yeah, no, she's been around for a long time. So
Okay.
she's like family here.
Ah,
So yeah, hate to hear that because she's just a sweet lady. So
so
but
you see,
she turned out great in spite of that. So
yeah, and so you see Ash's strengths, right?
I see Ash's strengths absolutely.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and she's very smart. She catches on to concepts quickly.
Hmm.
She's very helpful to the other people who come in here. So she's got a loving heart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
a lot of good things to say about her.
and courage to share that with your
Absolutely.
audience. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think, since she, is familiar with everyone here, it will probably feel like a safe space to do that. So
Hmm.
thank you, Wendy. Those were great. That was a great response. How about this? I know when you were here last time, you talked about mindfulness.
Hmm.
So I'd like to, if you could, kind of tie in how mindfulness would work with someone dealing with shame.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. Mindfulness is something that's so useful. Mindfulness is awareness. Mindfulness is time where we, as I was saying just before, with talking about opening to jealousy, for example, right? What is the truth of this moment? What am I knowing right now? I notice this chair that I'm sitting on, and I feel it supporting me, and I notice my voice and speaking with you, and the sound of you typing a little bit. What is the truth of this moment, right? And when we get in touch with the truth of this moment, what is happening for me, in this particular book, Tara Brach calls it "Take this U-turn in." Right? She says, "Take the U-turn inside. What is the truth of this moment?" And sometimes when we open to the moment, that's when things sort of come up for us. So, for example, sitting with an emotion that arises, right? And gaining awareness about what's here with me right now. Very often, especially when you quiet your mind a little, you allow yourself to intentionally focus on something. Other things may arise, right? And that's like, oh, I had this memory of when, Ash may have a childhood memory of something that happened and how sad she felt and how hurt she felt. And that may move the jealousy into sadness, right? That may, and with shame, same thing, if we're talking about shame, and I'm sure that there is shame. Excuse me, I'm recovering from COVID. I know it's just running a little. Sometimes there is shame packed into jealousy. What's wrong with me? Why didn't I get a mom like that? Right? And so when we have awareness, we have so much wisdom, right? So somebody who has, there's a quote by Viktor Frankl. I may have said it last time, but it goes like this: between the stimulus and the response, there's a space. And in that space is our power and our freedom. So if something happens and we react, that's reactivity. Somebody bumps up against you and bumps up against some guy and he punches the other guy in the face, right? Reactivity, right? When you open that space, then it's then we have choice. That's the space of mindfulness.
I
That's the
see.
space of what's happening here. What's the truth of this moment? Oh, that person just bumped into me. I feel disrespected. I feel angry. I feel all of these emotions, right? But I have some choice as to what I do with it. I want to punch him in the face, but oh, that's not probably going to be useful, right? I'm going to say, oh, hey, buddy, maybe he'll say he's sorry or something.
Right.
But what's
Excuse
happening
me.
in there? Yeah, yeah, excuse me, right? But what's happening in there? And that's our wisdom. That's like, okay, oh, I felt disrespected. Oh my goodness, like let me look at where else in my life have I felt disrespected. And that's one of the things, I listen as a therapist, as all therapists, not just me, but I think we all listen closely to the words that people use. And That's so important because if somebody says, for example, disrespected, oh, my boss was such a jerk, they were so disrespectful, or my partner, they did X, Y, or Z, they just don't respect me. And when you hear this, you hear something like that just comes up over and over. Um, to pause with that and just help. I ask the question, I notice you've mentioned that word a few times. Is that a familiar experience for you? And when else in your life have you felt disrespected? And again, you begin to break open those vulnerabilities, um, sort of unpack them. And mindfulness and sitting with those experiences um, just helps you to have the wisdom of awareness, which gives us choice, right? And helps us to understand a little more deeply. For example, and I go back to Ash with the jealousy and the sad, but the underneath, and oh, this is sadness, this is grief, this is loss, this is like, oh, how come I got dealt that hand and other people didn't, and I'm so sad about that, right? And I do need to grieve that, but
Oh,
just being able, yeah, just being able to connect those things can be helpful in and of itself.
well, Wendy, I wanted to give you, an opportunity to, sum this up and let everybody know where we can find you online, with your web
Oh,
address and all that.
sure. First, just thank you again, Deb, for having me
Oh, no
on. It's
problem.
just a pleasure. Um, my website is wendydumbroff.therapy.com. I'm a licensed professional counselor in New Jersey, in Madison, New Jersey, and it's Wendy with an I, wendydumbroff.therapy.com. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful, and I think you got us all thinking about this. Uh, this is just a totally new concept for even for me to think about
Ah,
and frame some of the stuff that comes across my desk as well. I'm
yeah,
not a licensed anything, but I've done this for a long time.
yeah.
They have a good handle on it, but this is I'm gonna have to give this some thought.
Well, you
I
can feel
think
free
I'm gonna
to call me, and I'm happy to have a
oh
conversation if
yeah,
you have
probably
any
let me have a
questions.
powwow.
Yes, we can have a powwow.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. That was
All right,
beautiful.
Deb. Yes, thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
Thank
Bye
you
bye.
so much. Bye bye.
Okay, you guys, that was Wendy Dumbroff and talking about shame. And I think, although we perceive shame as a negative emotion, if you think about it, I think sometimes, because as she was talking, I was thinking about some ways that we would feel shame or we anticipate feeling shame. And so it keeps us from doing stuff that we know we shouldn't do, saying stuff we shouldn't say, doing things we know we shouldn't do. Like as I was growing up, there were a lot of things I wouldn't do or say, my brothers and I, because we had we did not want to embarrass my father, and the thought that we would do that and do something against our family name, malign our family or make it look bad or something like that, we felt shame just even thinking about it. So I think in some aspects, some shame can probably be used for good, but the kind that we talked about tonight is a heavy burden on your heart and your spirit. And using the tools that Wendy was going over to, in the book that she recommended, I think it can go take you far to get rid of that shame and feel good about yourself. I think as we see in our advice column, most of the women who write in are battling with self esteem and a poor concept of themselves, and it's displayed in their behavior, their lack of boundaries, the kinds of stuff that they allow people to say and do to them, the overgiving, the doormat behaviors. All of those are negative behaviors. And like I said, she put a different frame around it. Now I am about reframing things, and now I'm going to see it in a frame of, well, maybe this person is feeling some kind of shame. It's really interesting. But anyway, we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's there is an upload because we do Shay and I do want to have a few hours when we don't do a live, but we'll be back on Sunday with another live. Let me see who's coming up. The calendar is up on the wall. So let's see. Oh, John Moore. We're going to be talking about boundaries. That's the Sunday show. And then on Monday, uh, Slaying Self-Doubt with Trish Roberts. So we got two really powerful shows to help you do better in your relationships and in your life coming up here on the Debsterism channel. So you guys, this was some good stuff. I tell you, Wendy brought it. But, listen to the video again. If you missed something, take notes on any of the shows that you'll see this month. It's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be a lot. I always recommend that you get a notebook and keep notes from all the speakers that you hear in one place. But you guys take care. Rest well this evening and get ready for lessons tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.